Okay, so welcome to my channel. So today we are going to continue the reproductive system. So we are going to go through the structure and function of the female now. So we did the male. If you haven't touched the male reproductive system, you can start with the male reproductive system. Okay, but if you specifically wanted the female, then you are in the right uh, place. Okay, so the female reproductive, as when as we are learning it, we are going to learn it in two ways. Okay, we are going to start with we are going to divide the genitals into two. We are going to divide the external and the internal genitalia. So that's what we are going to start with. So at first, let's start with the external genitalia. Okay, so the vulva refers to those parts that are outwardly visible. So we are going to start with the external female reproductive system. So then the vulva is also known as, of course, the external genitalia. Okay, just in case you didn't know that. Okay, so and the vulva includes the mons pubis, the labia majora, the labia minora, the clitoris, urethral opening, and the vaginal opening. That's what the vulva consists of. Then finally, the perineum. Okay. Then there are some individual differences in the size of the vulva, the coloration, the shape, and of course, uh, the same differences in size, coloration, and shape of the vulva are actually very common. Okay. So this is what we are talking about. So as you have seen, the external female genitalia, also known as the vulva or pudendum. Okay, so this is it. This is it here. Okay, that's the vulva, the one shown. Okay, so let's continue. So the mons pubis is a fat pad over pubic symphysis with hair after puberty. Then the labia, so the Latin word for lips is labia. I like this. I like asking this in a structured question where I ask, what's the Latin word for lips? Then of course the answer is labia. Then there are labia majora, which are long, fat, hair-covered skin folds. Then you have the labia minora, which are thin, hairless folds enclosing vestibules. And if you've seen in the deep, though not necessarily into the part of the vulva, but there are some glands that you also need to take note of. The ones we are talking about, we have the greater vestibular gland, which is here. Then apart from that, then we have the bulbal vestibule. These are things where, since we said they cover what, they cover what. So we also need to know from the diagram what they actually cover. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. Okay, so we have the greater vestibular gland, and you have the bulb of the vestibule. Okay, so that's what we are referring to, because if you say they cover what and if someone hasn't seen it, then it may become uh, difficulty for someone to actually know what we are talking about. Okay, so that's the labia minora, that's what it covers. And so the other name for the same greater vestibular gland is vulvovaginal gland, but the common name which we use is Bartholin's gland. Okay, so Bartholin, so in short, we are saying the labia minora is a thin airless and folds whose folds encloses the vestibule. And the vestibules these are the bulb of vestibules. Okay, then there is the greater vestibular gland. So the greater vestibular gland is the one which we call the Bartholini gland. So just that now we are calling it the Bartholini gland. So if you are wondering what a greater vestibular gland. How come we have never heard about it? So the other name for the greater vestibular gland is Bartholin gland. But Bartholin was more like the scientist who came up with the same, who was named Caspar Bartholin the Young. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, we are done with the history lesson. Okay, so the vestibule, which houses the urethral openings of the urethra and the vagina. So it has the urethra, which is anterior and drains urine from the bladder, and the baby comes out through the vagina or the vaginal orifice. Eh, Okay, that's the vaginal orifice here. So in short, uh, the introitus, which is here, and inside we have the vagina. Okay, but remember the vaginal orifice is the one which is visible outside. The vagina is one which is now internal. Hope you are getting the difference here. So the vaginal orifice is more of the vaginal introitus, the opening. That is what is visible outside. That's what part of the vulva. Then the vagina itself now inside is part of the, it's not part of the vulva. But the orifice, the opening is one which is part of the vulva. Okay. But here we are saying the vestibules. So mean the vestibule go all the way inside, and the houses the external openings of the urethra, and of course the external openings of the vagina, which we are calling the vaginal orifice. Okay, then apart from that, we also have the clitoris, which is an anterior homologue of penis, sensitive, which is a sensitive erectile tissue. Then you have the perineum, which is a diamond-shaped region. So as you have been, it has been highlighted here. That's the perineum. So this is what we are referring to. So this is the external genitalia or the vulva to be specific. So you have the mons pubis, which of course has air during puberty. You have the prepuce of the clitoris. Then you have the clitoris of the labia majora, labia minora, the hymen, the vaginal opening, the anus, the perineum. But remember, when we talk of the external female genitalia, we don't include the anus, of course, we just end on the perineum. So now let's look at the structures in details. So the mons pubis is the triangular mound of fat tissue that covers the pubic bone. It protects the pubic symphysis. Then, during adolescence, sex hormones trigger the growth of pubic hair on the mons pubis. Then the hair varies in coarseness, cariness, amount, color, and thickness. Okay, next is the labia majora. Then this is referred to as the outer lip. And this time outer lip has a darker pigmentation. Then the labia majora protects the introitus and urethral openings. Then it is covered with hair and sebaceous glands. So that's about the labia majora. Then it actually tends to be smooth, moist, and hairless. So that's and become flaccid with age and after childbirth. So in short, we are saying after with age, we are saying if you hear what we are saying is that initially it is covered with hair and sebaceous glands. Then it also tends to be smooth, moist, and hairless. Then becomes flaccid with age and after childbirth. So with age and after childbirth, then it may tend to be smooth, moist, and hairless. Okay. Then let's go to the labia minora. So the labia minora is also referred to as the inner lips. It is made up of erectile connective tissue that darkens and swells during sexual arousal. Then it is located inside the labia majora. Then they are more sensitive and respond to touch than the labia majora. Then the labia minora tightens during intercourse. Okay, then let's go to the clitoris. So the clitoris is the highly sensitive organ composed of nerves, blood vessels, and erectile tissue. It is located under the prepuce. Then it is made up of a shaft and a glans. So in short, it actually is an homologue of the penis. Remember, the penis has a glans, as a shaft. So even the clitoris is the same. It has a glans, which of course the one is visible to the outside, and it also has a shaft. Then it becomes engorged with blood during sexual stimulation, and it is a key to sexual pleasure for most women. Then the urethral opening is located directly below the clitoris. Okay, so below the clitoris you have the urethral opening, then below the urethral opening of the vaginal opening, or the vaginal introitus. So the opening of the vagina may be covered with a thin sheath called the hymen. Again, this is also one of the questions I like asking. Okay. Then using the presence of an intact hymen for determining virginity is erroneous. So we don't necessarily use the hymen to determine whether someone is a virgin or not, because there are instances where some people are born without the hymen, or it just breaks spontaneously mostly due to activities, extraneous activities. Okay, so that's what we are saying. Some women are born without hymens, then the hymen may be perforated by many different events. That's what we are saying here. Okay, let's go to the perineum. So the muscle and tissue located between the vaginal opening and the anal canal is also part of the same perineum, and it supports and surrounds the lower parts of the urinary and digestive tracts. Then the perineum contains an abundance of nerve endings that makes it sensitive to touch. Then an episiotomy is an incision of the perineum used during childbirth for widening of the vaginal opening. Then of course after an episiotomy then you have to suture it back so that actually you retain the normal, uh, at least the normal perineum. Okay, so that's some of the applied anatomy in the episiotomy, and episiotomy is one of them. Okay, then let's go to the internal genitalia. So in short, we are done with the external genitalia. Now we are on the internal one. So the internal genitalia consists of the vagina, the cervix, the uterus, fallopian tubes, ovary. Okay, then this is the internal one. Okay, that's what we are referring to as the internal genitalia, the internal female genitalia. Okay, so we have the uterus here. Okay, you have the from the uterus you have the um so the you have the so this is the bladder. So I got confused. I saw the urethra here, so I was like, is it a mistake on the picture or what? Okay, so this is the bladder. The uterus is this side. Okay, so you have the uterus, you have the cervix, you have the cervical os, then you have the vagina, then you have the Bartholin's gland, and remember Bartholin's glands other name, the greater vestibular glands. Okay, then this is the vagina, okay, then the introitus outside. Then the clitoris is here, then the urethral opening is here. Okay, so these are some of the things you have to know. Okay, so let's start with the vagina. So the vagina consists it the vagina connects the cervix to the external genitals. It is located between the bladder and the rectum. Its functions are as a passageway for the menstrual flow, for the uterine secretions to pass down through the introitus. Then also have the birth canal during labor. Then with the help of the two Bartholin glands, it becomes lubricated during sexual intercourse. Though if I give students to tell me the functions of the female reproductive system, you find that they always put for sexual purposes. I'm like, look, that's not necessarily the function of the reproductive system. It's not for sex. Okay? These are the functions. So someone who says the vagina is the site for sex. Like what? Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So the vagina actually has a thin, is more of a thin old tube. And the other question I like asking is to draw the internal female reproductive system. This is the diagram, which is the easiest one to draw. Okay, this is the diagram, which is just to draw. There's the ovarian ligament, the round broad, there's a broad ligament. Okay, then the other structures such as the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, then the lumen of the uterus, and the fundus of the uterus. Okay, and then the layers. Though I don't like putting the layers during if you are just drawing on your own, because you might point at the wrong part and I might give you give you a negative marking. Okay, so that's what we mean. Okay, so the vagina is a thin odd tube. So this is the thin odd tube we're talking about. Then inside it, it has what we call ruga. Okay, then the vagina itself is inferior to the uterus. Then it is anterior to the rectum and posterior to the urethra and bladder. Then the same vagina is more of a birth, it's a birth canal, and it is highly distensible, and it has three layers: as the adventitia, the muscularis, and the mucosa. Okay, so we have the mucosa, the muscularis, the adventitia. These are the layers of the vagina. Okay, so we are done with the vagina. Let's put the cervix. So the cervix connects the uterus to the vagina. Then the cervix has what we call the cervical opening, and the cervical openings, of course, are of two. We have the internal os and the external os. So the cervical opening to the vagina is actually small. Then this acts as a safety precaution against foreign bodies entering the uterus. Then during childbirth, the cervix dilates to accommodate the passage of the uterus, of the fetus, sorry. Okay, then this dilatation is a sign that labor has. Okay, that's the cervix. Then you have the perineum now. Okay, so that's how the perineum looks like, and it's of the muscles of the perineum and whatnot. Okay, and one of the main muscles of the pelvic floor, we have the levator ani muscle. Okay, so that's for some of the things you have to know. But good part, I think, during our lesson when we were learning about the principal skeletal muscles, we did the muscles of the perineum, so that's why we haven't done the muscles of the perineum. Okay, let's continue to the uterus. So the uterus is commonly referred to as the womb in layman language. Then it is a pear-shaped organ about the size of a clenched fist, and it is made up of the endometrium, myometrium, and perimetrium. And it consists of blood-enriched tissue that sloughs off each month during menstrual cycle. Then the powerful muscles of the uterus expands to accommodate a growing fetus and push it through the birth canal. Then the uterine wall is about 1.5 centimeters. Okay, so in the pelvic, the uterus is found in the pelvis, anterior to the rectum and posterior superior to the bladder. Then it is oral inside. It has a thick old organ. It is a thick old organ. It receives, retains, and nourishes fertilized egg to embryo. Okay, that's the uterus we are talking about. Okay, so this is the uterus here, the one which is looking like a fist. That is the uterus. Okay, and then the uterus has a body, which is the major part, as a fundus, also as the isthmus, as a cervix. And below it there is a cervix. Okay, Then the cavity of the uterus is small, except of course in pregnancy. Then the cervical canal, I think I already mentioned to say the cervical canal has the internal os and the external os. Then below it, then finally you find the vagina. Okay, then the cervix, the tau fibrous ring, inferior tip projects into the vagina and it produces mucus. Then the uterine wall has three basic layers. They have the perimetrium, which is the outer serous membrane. You have myometrium, which is the middle muscle. Then you have the endometrium, which is the inner mucosa lining. Okay, then the uterine supports as the mesometrium, which is the largest division of the broad ligament, and it is the main support actually. Then apart from that, you also have the cardinal ligament. Then you have the round ligament. So the broad ligament is this one. You have the ovarian ligament here. Then we have the cardinal ligament here. Okay, these are some of the things. Then the round ligament is this side. That's the round ligament. Okay. So let's now look at the endometrium. So endometrium, which is the inner mucosa lining of the uterine cavity, is as simple columnar epithelium containing secretory and ciliated cells. Then it also has a lamina propria of connective tissue. Then the endometrium has two main layers or strata. Number one, we have the functionalis layer or the functional layer. Then it has the basalis layer or the basal layer. Then the one that shed off during the one that sheds off during the one that sheds off if no implantation has occurred is the functional layer. So the functional layer is actually shades off during if no implantation has occurred. The functional layer is supposed to shed off. Then the basal now, which is found at the base, this one there's no need for it to shed off since it's one which even has the stem cells. Okay, so the one that shades off is the functional layer, the stratum functionalis of the endometrium shades off. Okay, and then in terms of the blood supply of the uterus, the blood supplies we have the uterine arteries from the internal iliac, we have the ovarian arteries from the abdominal aorta, the inferior to the renal arteries. Then the vagina, I think we have the vagina. Let's go to the oviducts of the fallopian tubes. Okay. The oviducts, the fallopian tubes, serve as a pathway for the ovum to the uterus. Then they are the site for fertilization by the male sperm, and this is also one of my most likely my structured question where I ask which is the main site for fertilization. And then often the same fallopian tube is often referred to as the oviduct or the uterine tube. Okay, especially uterine tube is one which is actually being used more often now. Okay, then the fertilized egg takes approximately 6 to 10 days to travel through the fallopian tube to implant in the uterine lining. Then there are three parts of the fallopian tube. You have the infundibulum, the ampulla, and the isthmus. Okay, then there is also what we call a fimbra. So the fimbra is one which is actually nearest to the which is nearest to the ovaries. And I remember the mnemonic we had for the fallopian tube was FIFA is in action. So fimbra, isthmus, ampulla, infundibulum. Those are some of the parts of the fallopian. Okay. So the fimbra is a finger-like. These are finger-like that pick up the egg. That's the fimbra. Okay, so these are the fimbra. Okay. Then They have the beating cilia and masticular peristosis that propel egg to the uterus. Then it empties into the superior part of the uterus after, of course, the egg has traveled all the right. Okay, then let's go to the ovaries. So the ovaries are the female gonads or the sex glands. They develop and expel an ovum each month. A woman is born with approximately 400 immature eggs called the follicles. And again, depending on the literatures, others will tell you 300,000. So, depending on the literatures. So, during a lifetime, a woman releases at 400 to 500 fully matured eggs for fertilization. Then the follicles in the ovaries produce the female sex hormones, progesterone and estrogen. Then these hormones prepare the uterus for implantation of the fertilized egg. Okay. Then the gonads, which are the ovaries, of course, in the females, they are paired almond shaped, flanking the uterus in the lateral wall of the uh, true pelvis. They are about 3 by 1.5 by 1 centimeters in size. So these are the ovaries, these ones. Okay, these ones are the ovaries we're talking about. Okay, then in terms of histology, the uterine tube is as seriated and non-seriated simple columnar epithelium. Then the ciliary movement and periodic peristaltic contractions move the ova. Then secretions of nutrient substances as well actually occurs there. Okay, this is the storage for the uterine tube. Okay, then the same ovaries are retroperitoneal but surrounded by peritoneal cavity. Then you have the broad ligament, the suspensor ligament of the ovaries, the ovarian ligament. I think these ones I already pointed them out. So it's just more of a repetition so that at least people familiarize themselves with what we're able to see. So this is the uterus and this is the fibra. Then these two are the ovaries. So this is an ovary and this is also an ovary. Okay, this is how it looks like now. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So the ovaries are held in place by the mesentery and ligaments, and the same ligaments are the ones we have mentioned: the broad ligament, suspensor ligament of the ovary, and the ovarian ligament. These are the ones which hold the ovaries in place. Okay, then in terms of innervation of the ovaries, it is innervated by the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. Okay, so that's the things you have to. Okay, then what about the structure of the ovary? So the structure of the ovaries is what we call fibrous capsules, which we call the tunica albuginea. Okay, so the fibrous capsule, which we call the tunica albuginea, which is the fibrous capsule surrounding it. Okay, then the outer cortex houses developing gametes, which are the oocytes within the follicles. So the outer cortex. So we have the cortex now. So we have the outer cortex. So that's the cortex. Then inside the cortex, we are saying we have the gametes, which is the oocytes within follicles. So in short, within the outer cortex, we have follicles in short. Okay. Then the inner part is the medulla, which has condylus connective tissue with the largest vessel and the nerves. Then together, in short, we are saying that there are three parts. We have the fibrous capsule, which is the outer layer, which we call the tunica albuginea. Then the other outer part is the cortex, which is just called the outer cortex, for instance, or the cortex. Then inside it you have the medulla. But remember, the cortex, the medulla, there are a lot of organs that have this. So you can even call them the ovarian cortex, ovarian medulla. I think it's okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, then in terms of functions of the ovary, so number one is production of a mature oocyte capable of fertilization and embryonic development. Then also production of ovarian steroids such as estradiol and progesterone. And the other is production of gonadotropins such as inhibin and activin. Okay, then there's what we call the ovarian cycle. So ovarian cycle has phases. Number one is the follicular phase, which is the first first phase, approximately 14 days, but variable. And this same follicular phase actually overlaps with the menstrual overlaps with menstruation. Menstruation occurs as an average of 5 days. So the first 5 days find that they are going to overlap with the follicular phase. Okay, then the egg developed in the follicle, which is stimulated by the follicle stimulating hormone, and estrogen is produced. Then in terms of ovulation, the egg released from the follicle due to luteinizing hormone surge. Then the egg is in abdominal cavity. Then it is picked up by the fibula of the fallopian tube. Then not necessarily halfway point. Then you have the luteal phase, which is the post-ovulatory phase, 14 days, which is more constant. Then the corpus luteum develops from exploded follicle and produces the progesterone as well as estrogen. Then progesterone stimulates the uterus to be ready for baby. Then from pregnancy, the corpus luteum degenerates into the corpus albicans. But don't worry about this. Our next lesson will be on the ovarian cycle, the ovarian cycle. So we are going to actually learn more about this in details now, as in what triggers the stimulation of the follicle stimulating hormone and whatnot. But I thought of introducing it even in this lecture for the female reproductive system. Okay, so this is what we are just saying. So this is more of an introduction. Okay, then the oocyte, after it has the oocyte develops the zona pellucida, which is a glycoprotein coat protective shell, and the sperm must penetrate to fertilize the oocyte. Then the thicker cells stimulated by the luteinizing hormone secrete androgens. Then the granulosa cells within the follicle stimulating hormone influence convert androgens to estrogen. There's also the follicular cells called the granulosa cells now. Okay. Then there's a clear liquid that gather to form fluid-filled antrum. Then now finally a secondary follicle. Then surrounding coat of granulosa cells become now what we call the coronal radiator. Then a fully mature, ready to ovulate, our follicle is called the Graafian follicle. Okay, then in terms of ovulation, we're saying it is signal for ovulation. The signal for ovulation is the luteinizing hormone surge, and the ovarian or ruptures, and the egg is released, surrounded by its coronal. Right. Okay. And then, apart from that, we also need to know about oogenesis, or generation of eggs. Okay, so the oogenesis starts in the fetal period, and no more oocytes are made after about 7th month. Then this developed only to early stage of meiosis 1 by birth and stops. Then this, where it stops at this stage, is called the primary oocyte. Then 6 to 12 primordial oocytes, each cycle selected to develop for ovulation, who of course must die. Then only then is meiosis 1 completed. And then finally the secondary oocyte is then arrested in meiosis 2 and anaphase 2. Okay, then in meiosis 2 not completed, now an ovum. So in short, what we are saying is the one which is produced, the egg which is produced, actually is produced in an arrested meiosis 2 of anaphase 2, and it only completes that unless the sperm penetrates its plasma membrane. That's when it's going to complete the meiosis. Then of the 4 daughter cells, only one becomes ovum and needs a lot of cytoplasm. Then the other 3 become polar body. So otherwise, oogenesis is also one of the things we are going to cover during our general embryology. So the ovarian cycle starts at puberty under the influence of course, of hormones such as estrogen. Then you make the primordial follicles. Then each month some proceed to form primary follicles. Then the other from primary follicles, others go to the secondary follicles. Then few again proceed to become tertiary now, which are the Graafian follicles. Okay, that's what happens during oogenesis. But again, remember we are going to cover oogenesis in general embryology in probably 2 slides from 2 tutorial videos from now. We are going to cover oogenesis specifically. So in short, during general embryology lecture 1, we are going to cover oogenesis. Okay, then what is menstruation? Menstruation. So there are some definitions. Before we talk about menstruation, there are some definitions that you have to know. There is another definition which we call menarche, but there is a E at the end, menarche, which is the onset of menstruation, which signals the body changes that transforms the female body. And the average menstruation age is about 12 years, and the range ranges from depending on the literature again, the range to 10 to 15. That's the range. Okay. Then the amount of bleeding varies from woman to woman. Then expulsion, it leads to expulsion of blood clots. Then the blood color can vary from bright red to darky maroon. Then usually occurs every 25 to 32 days. Again, others will tell you it occurs in terms of the days, the days they tell you 21 to 35. So again, it just differ. Then women can experience fluid retention, cramping, mood swings, weight gain, breast tenderness, diarrhea, and constipation during. Okay, so those are the things which we have to know. We are going to discuss our next lecture. Of course, will be on menstruation, so that's why I was skipping those parts. Okay, so there are 6 hormones that you need to know about. We have one, the follicle stimulating hormone, which is FSH, not FSH. Then you have luteinizing hormone, which signals ovulation. Then you have estrogen, which is produced throughout the menstrual cycle. Then you have progesterone, which is produced during the second half of cycle, and progesterone is the hormone of pregnancy. Then all these then progesterone contributes to thickening of the endometrium, which is shed. Then all these hormones contribute to thickening of the endometrium, which is shed during menstrual phase if fertilization does not take place. Then both follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone are produced in the pituitary gland. Then both estrogen and progesterone are produced by the follicles in the ovaries. Okay, so again, in terms of stages of life, again we are going to cover them in embryology. So, but I can just give a summary. So what we are saying that embryologically, males and females start out sexually indifferent. The gonads, the ducts, and externally identical structures. Then at 5 weeks, gestation changes start to take place. Okay. Then at puberty, reproductive organs grow to adult size and reproduction becomes possible, which is between 10 and 15. Then influence of rising levels of gonadal hormones such as testosterone in males and estrogen in females again adds more difference. Then what we call the female menopause, then between which occurs between 45 to 55 years, whereas the loss of ovulation and the fertility. Okay, okay. Then you also have to note that the bone pelvis will be covered separately. So I think I've already covered a tutorial video on the types of pelvis. So the female pelvis, the bone pelvis, it differs in females. We have the gynecoid pelvis, which is the commonest pelvis. There are some females who have the android, which is the typical male pelvis. There are some who have the anthropoid, the platypelloid. So I'll drop the video in the comment section. You can try to check out the video for the types of pelvis, or you can just go on the channel and just search the types of pelvis, and you will actually see the types of pelvis that are available. Okay, then let's go to the female sexual response and hormonal control. So the female sexual response includes arousal and orgasm, but without ejaculation. The woman may become pregnant without having an orgasm, and then the follicle stimulating hormone, the luteinizing hormone, estrogen, progesterone play a major role in regulating the functions of the female reproductive system. Then at puberty, when the ovaries and uterus are mature enough to respond to hormone stimulation, certain stimuli cause the hypothalamus to start secreting gonadotropin releasing. So, what's the response? So I also added another video which so that at least people again see the actual things. But at least you have some ideas.
Female orgasm is a complex psychological and biological experience. Reaching and experiencing orgasm is not the same for every woman. The orgasm can result from many types of stimulation, including clitoral, vaginal, and stimulation in erogenous zones, commonly the nipple area. For most women, orgasm depends critically on stimulation of the external glands of the clitoris. The clitoris has the most nerve endings in the human body. It has legs and vestibular bulbs that wrap around the vagina. The legs and the bulbs contain erectile tissue that fills with blood and expands when sexually aroused. Some women can achieve different kinds of orgasms from stimulation of select regions inside the vagina, such as the so-called G-spot and cervix, or a blend of the two. Erogenous zones are sensitive areas that can provide pleasure and sexual arousal when they receive stimulation. And the nipples are a common erogenous zone for many people. Each nipple has hundreds of nerve endings, making them super sensitive tissue. When the nipples are stimulated, they send sparks in the genital sensory cortex. This is the same area of the brain that's aroused by vaginal or clitoral stimulation. During arousal, blood flows to the genitals, causing them to become more sensitive. As arousal increases, a person's heart and breathing rate may increase. women experience rhythmic muscle spasms in the vagina, uterus, and anus during or even after an orgasm. Contractions typically last between 0.8 and 17 seconds, but it can be different. Lubrication begins when the hormones signal to the brain that you are being aroused sexually. And the vulvovaginal glands start secreting fluids to help the process of penetration. There is swelling in the inner and outer vaginal lips. Although orgasm in women is not accompanied by seminal emission, some women squirt a mixture of urine and Skene's gland secretions from the urethra at orgasm, which contain urea, creatinine, uric acid, and prostate-specific antigen. Hormonal birth control during or after pregnancy and menopause may cause some women to find it difficult to feel wet and experience painful intercourse. Without asking her, there is no way to tell if a woman has had an orgasm. An orgasm is both a physical and psychological response. Some women may need to feel love to orgasm. Excessive stress and strains of life, relationship problems, poor physical and mental health, a history of abortion and sexual abuse. Also, sometimes being religious and having sexual shame and stigma could make it more difficult to orgasm. Many females can have another orgasm after the resolution, whereas males usually require a period of rest before having another orgasm. Women do not need to orgasm to get pregnant. However, orgasms may boost fertility.
Okay, so at least with the visual learning, I'm sure you have gotten something. Okay, if you haven't subscribed and the notification. Okay, so let's continue. So we are done with the female response to arousal. So now let's look at the puberty in females now. Okay, so puberty is the age at which the internal reproductive organs reach maturity. So this is called the menarche. So of course, during menarche, someone will actually even begin having menses. So menarche is menses, menarche. So that's the easiest way to remember it. So it marks the beginning of childbearing age. Then the ovaries are stimulated by the gonadotrophins, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Then the age of onset of puberty varies between 10 and 14, others 10 and 15. So like I said, the difference in literatures. Then at puberty, a number of physical and psychological changes take place. So these include: 1, the uterus, the uterine tubes, and the ovaries reach maturity. Then the menstrual cycle and ovulation begin. So that's what we're referring to as menarche. Then the breasts develop and enlarge. Then pubic and axillary hair begins to grow. Then there is an increase in the rate of growth in height and widening of the pelvis. Then there is an increase in the amount of fat deposited in the subcutaneous tissue. Then the same increase in the fat deposits in the subcutaneous tissue is especially at the hips and the breasts. That's why women tend to have hips during and after puberty, and of course there's enlargement of the breasts as well. Okay, Then there are modifications of the arms to suit the new structures. So this is seen when one is standing in an anatomical position. Okay, then apart from that, we are now done with the female reproductive system. Then let's look at the accessory organs. So the mammary glands are the best accessory organs to look at. So the mammary glands are located in the breast, overlying the pectoralis major muscles, and are present in both sexes. Okay, that's what you have to know. Then these same mammary glands, even though they are located in both sexes, they are usually only functional in the female. Then functionally, the mammary glands produce milk. Then structurally, they are modified sweat glands. So in short, we are talking about two things here. Functional, they produce milk. Structurally, they are modified sweat glands. So location of the breasts is in the second to the sixth rib. Then they are lateral border of the sternum to the anterior axillary line. Then they lie on the pectoralis major and serratus anterior. Then they contain fat, glandular tissue, and suspensory ligament. That's the anatomy. Okay, so this is what we are saying. It's just all the intercostal muscles of the nipple of the rectiferous ducts, the mammary, and the ducts. Okay, that's what we are. Okay, then all of the ducts and lobules are lined by two layers of epithelium of the luminal cell layers of the alveoli, which are composed of the cuboid and the columna. So cuboid is at rest, the columna during lactation. Then the smaller ducts, we have a single layer of the columnar epithelium. Then the larger ducts are many layered columna, and the lactiferous ducts have a stratified squamous, and the other ones are myopithelial cell layer. So that's what we are saying. Okay, so this is what we are referring to. So we have the lactiferous ducts. Then from the lactiferous ducts, we have the lactiferous sinuses, and this is how milk flows. Okay, so the lactiferous ducts are here. From the lactiferous ducts, you go into the lactiferous sinuses, then milk will be ejected to the outside. Then you have the alveoli of the breast, you have the fat tissue. Okay, then you have the lobules. Then the lobule are the one which contains alveoli. Okay, then finally you have the suspensory ligament which holds the breast in place, or firm for it to help it stand. Okay, then anteriorly we have the areola here, and you have the areola glands. Okay, that's another. Then in terms of the lobes, they are about 15 to 20 in number. They are composed of minute glandular structures called lobules. Then the lobules empty via ductals in the rectiferous ducts. Then from the rectiferous ducts, the rectiferous ducts open at the nipple. Then you have the ampulla or lactiferous sinuses near its end, which acts as a reservoir of milk or abnormal discharge. So in short, we are saying from the lobules, you have the ductals. From the ductals, you have the lactiferous ducts. Lactiferous ducts, then you have the lactiferous sinuses. Then finally, the nipple. Okay, and remember when we are talking about the oxytocin during our endocrine, we say the one which is responsible for actually ejection of milk, actually which stimulates ejection of milk, is oxytocin. Okay, hope you remember. It causes the contraction of the myoepithelium, myoepithelial cells to be specific. Okay, in terms of stroma, this is a supporting framework of the gland, and partly fibrous and partly fat tissue. condensed fibrous tissue forming a septa, which is known as the suspensory ligament of Cooper, which anchors the superficial to the deep fascia. Then the fat tissue forms the hemispherical contour of the breast. Okay, so again, this is what we are talking about. You have the suspensory ligament of the breast, also known as suspensory ligament of Cooper. Okay, Cooper's ligament. You have the pectoralis major muscle, the lobule containing alveoli, the secondary tubules, the mammary ducts here, the lactiferous sinuses, the lactiferous ducts, the nipple, the areola, adipose tissue, and subcutaneous tissue. Okay, so then this is now anteriorly how the breasts look like. Okay, and remember we are saying all sexes have breasts, but they differ in terms of function. Okay, so the functions of the mammary glands are the synthesis, secretion, and ejection of milk. So these functions, called the lactation, are associated with the pregnancy and childbirth. Milk production is stimulated largely by the hormone prolactin from the anterior pituitary gland, which contributes with contributions from progesterone and estrogens. Then the ejection of milk is stimulated by oxytocin, which is released from the posterior pituitary in response to the sucking of an infant on the mother's nipple. Okay, so that's one thing you also need to understand. Okay, but of course, functionally, the male breasts, of course, doesn't do this. Okay, okay. So let's so checkpoint. So in short, we have come to the end of the lecture. So this is the checkpoint now. So this is one of my favorite compulsory questions, where I say the organs of the female reproductive system produce and maintain the female sex cells or egg cells, or the ova to be specific. Question 1. Draw a well-labeled diagram of the internal organ of the female reproductive system. So this is one of the highly anticipated question in anatomy if I'm the one preparing the exam, because for the male, I usually ask for labeling, but for the female, I usually ask for drawings. At least people need to know how to draw. Even for the female, even for the male, I can ask just that the female one, which I think is easier, and even the quiz has also a lot of questions. I think that's the main reason. It has a lot of questions I like to ask about. Then the other question is state 5 functions of the female reproductive system. Then the other last question is describe the female reproductive cycle or the menstrual cycle. Okay, then the other question I think I also added another question where I asked I think I've added 2 questions on this question in one of the previous exams, where I said write down 5 structures or 5 structures that are found on the vulva. I even say in brackets, I say the external female genitalia. Okay, so then apart from that, then again, people are getting the question wrong. I don't know why someone can forget things that are found on the vulva. Just imagine. Okay, so those are some of the things under the checkpoint that you need to ask yourself. Okay, so have you actually gotten something from this? Can you answer this question as a compulsory? Okay, so I think we can move on from the compulsory. I think let's do other things. Okay, so that's the end of our lecture. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and turn on notification. And so we are continuing with anatomy and physiology lecture not until we finish all the way up to general embryology. So next lecture we will be on the menstrual cycle now in details. Although we won't go much into details, but we still talk about it as separately. We have already touched the topic, but we are going to now just go through the same topic, menstrual cycle, and just talk about it. Okay, because it's also something that I asked. So describe the female reproductive cycle, the menstrual cycle, for like 8 marks. Yeah, so that's one of the common questions I also like to ask. Describing the female reproductive cycle, the menstrual cycle, to be specific. So that's why I like to put it separately as a lecture on its own, but good part is a short one, more like just 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, then we are done. Alright, okay, so see you on the next tutorial video, which is on menstrual cycle. And give us a like, share the video, and also make sure to subscribe and the bell notification.